and community development. He's, such a fixture in the housing community, not just in the county, but throughout Hampton Roads. And he's a really good friend too. So I'm so glad to see his smiling face. Second time in like a week, which is awesome. And Brett Meadows is a planner with the county. He's been the liaison with the community planning team. So he is very familiar with the comprehensive plan. So we have two of the most articulate members of the entire staff presenting sort of an update on the comprehensive plan that is moving along swimmingly now. Like we're getting closer and closer. So I'm thrilled that they could join us today. And then when they finish, time allowing, I will give as quick an update as I can. Truth and disclosure, I do have a 1 o'clock as well, but I can be maybe a few minutes late for that if I need to be. So with that, Madam President, Madam CEO, I'll zip it and let Vaughn and Brett do what they do best.
Thanks, Susan. Brett, we decided that Brett would go first, and we've got a little bit of a PowerPoint. And so Brett, you ready to go? He might need to have control so he can share his screen.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for hosting us and sitting with me through those technical issues. As Susan said, I'm part of the community participation team. I'm on the planning staff side of that. So I help with the outreach for our comprehensive plan. And so I'll just briefly go over sort of the latest happenings. For those of you familiar with our plan or unfamiliar, so we've got it's a little different this year. Our big change to the comprehensive plan update process is using this scenario and model building, which is kind of some of the latest practices in planning. It allows different inputs for transportation or land use, and so you can change, you can compare multiple scenarios. If you keep the county as is, what might happen if it gains a certain amount of population? If you make some changes to land use or changes in other areas, it can help you compare how's rural land preserved, or how does that impact housing availability or housing affordability. So it's a really neat modeling. In between each of these project phases, we've done community engagements to kind of check, make sure we're on the right track, see how the community is feeling about the progress. This is our sort of overall community engagement process. We started even before the comprehensive plan update in the spring of 2019. Many of you may recall there was a citizen survey. Had a random sample of 1,000+ citizens, and that's served as a sort of baseboard just to see what's on people's minds. And then from there, we moved into multiple other rounds, kind of building off that first one. And currently, we just completed this round 3 of inputs, and I'll talk a little about that more in a second. That round 3 that we're on now, or just finished wrapping up, had 3 questionnaires. They were one focused on sort of policies and actions that we could take from this comprehensive plan. One focused on community design guidelines. So how areas should look, not necessarily how the land should be used, but whenever the land is used for a certain thing, whether it's commercial or single family homes or multifamily homes, what are some design guidelines that people in the county might feel strongly about? And then finally, a future land use map, proposed designation changes. That's a wordful, but that's there's still some opportunity for input in that one. Going back to this previous slide, There will be public hearings on some of those proposed land use designation changes, and there is opportunity to provide public comment on that. With those 3 questionnaires, we had 4 supporting community chats. Some of these can be kind of overwhelming issues for people who are unfamiliar. So those were a way to try to have some more formal conversation and some education pieces to get people caught up. And we had paper copies. Most of this was online, but we also had paper copies. And just due to the pandemic, we extended the time frame for this piece over what it might normally have been. And our outreach methods for this last round, and many of these were used in prior rounds, we had print, front page article in the Virginia Gazette, op-eds, multiple newsletters, both from us and then through other departments at James City County, including Parks and Rec and the Office of Economic Development. There's a real estate billing mailing that went to 20,000 homes. We had an insert in that. We had direct outreach to different organizations, including HOAs and religious institutions. So we tried to cover as many aspects of where people get their news as possible, especially given a pandemic where in-person contact and gatherings was obviously limited. As I mentioned earlier, there's still some opportunity to comment on land use designation changes and then sort of general thoughts on what's been produced so far. You can visit our Engage 2045 website. If you just type in James City County Engage 2045, that'll take you to the general page. And then there's a specific page within that where you can share your ideas, general thoughts you might have, as well as subscribe to future updates. We do have Planning Commission working group sessions coming up that will discuss some of those land use designation changes. And those will be kind of the next opportunity. I did want to point out, let's see, way back in this round 2, I believe Susan, we had a listening forums, and I believe Susan sent us a presentation on y'all's behalf. And that was an opportunity for different organizations to really talk about things that they would like to see or would find helpful in the comprehensive plan. And then the community participation team that I'm a part of is made up of planning commissioners and citizens at large. And one of those is Phil Piper, who maybe some of you know. He's been a part of that group as well. So with that, I'll pass it on to Vaughn.
So as Brett pointed out, his focus is on the comprehensive plan and primarily the housing chapter of the comprehensive plan. And in this round of the comp plan, the housing chapter is going to be strongly informed by the work that was done by the Workforce Housing Task Force. I touched on this last, or maybe it was year before last now, when Susan invited me to present. So Susan has seen this before, and I'm going to go through this quickly just to inform those of you who may not be familiar with the Workforce Housing Task Force. The task force, let's see if I can get my navigation to work. Okay, there we go. So the task force was formed as part of the county's strategic plan activities back in 2016. The task force was a group of 16 citizens who came together and focused on workforce housing in the county, the issues surrounding it. So the task force, the goal was expanding and diversifying the local economy and supporting strategies to facilitate development of workforce housing, workforce and affordable housing. The goals were to produce a plan to encourage adequate supply of affordable housing or workforce housing and the strategies and how to achieve that, and to also get public consensus on the issue. we spent a significant time in the task force focusing on, well, what does it mean? What does workforce housing mean? And it was, all of this information is still on the county's website. You can go to community development under neighborhood development and see the entire proceedings from the task force. So there's a lot of considered discussion and focus on getting it right for the county. What do we mean when we say workforce housing? So basically, when you think about us, James City County, and a little bit larger in our region, the Historic Triangle, we know that we have a large service sector, and those people who work in the service sector are part of our workforce. And we understand that there's a struggle for those households, those individuals who are working households, to afford the housing that's in our community. So for those of you who are listening, what we're showing here are some depictions, some images of people who might be in typical workforce jobs in our community. So as I said, it's difficult for households who are working. Oftentimes there are multiple people in the household working full-time, or piecing together jobs to try to earn a full-time living. And even at that, there's not enough housing for them in our community. And that has impacts. It impacts our traffic, impacts our wear and tear on the roads, it impacts our community because we don't have enough people in the community to handle the jobs that are available. It impacts our employers because they see a cycling of people who come from other parts of the region, Lower Peninsula, maybe coming across the James on the ferry, and they cycle through those people. They give them those skills and their time, and then those people find higher paying jobs or better paying jobs with their experience in their local where they live. They take them there, leaving our employers to have to spend time and money again retraining new workers. So it's important that the people who are living in our community have access to safe, decent, and affordable housing. So in looking at the demographics of people who are in our community, who are actually living here, we also focus on those who are cost burdened. And cost burden means that you're spending more than 30% of your household income on housing. What our consultants on this project showed us is that there are over 8,000 households in the county who are cost burdened. And these are people who are owning, and then 3,000 of those renting are also cost burdened. And that being cost burden means that you have less income in your family budget to afford other things. If you're spending it on housing, then you're not spending it on healthcare. You're not spending it on education. You're not saving on retirement. And those have long-term impacts. The other thing that we showed is that residents in James City County, we have about 17,500 individuals who drive into the county every day for work, and about that same amount, 18,200 who drive out. Anyone who's been on 199 at around 7 in the morning can attest to this. And if you miss it in the morning, if you stick around 5:30, you can see the reverse happen in the evening. That's that workforce shifting. And so part of that influx is because those people who come up this way got to turn around and go back because they can't afford to live here. Can't afford the median, you've got the median renter who can't afford to rent in our locality, the median buyer who can't afford to own. And by median, I'm speaking of income. The median being, if you look at the income across the entire region, that midpoint is the median. So the task force, in focusing on and understanding these dynamics, focused on what it thought should be some goals and some outcomes, and had focused on housing serves as a platform for an individual and a family's well-being. I think we can all understand the sentiment that if you are in a safe, decent house that's yours, that you have a certain feeling of well-being as you reside in that house. Housing also serves for provide inclusive and diverse communities. We look at who we are in James City County, and when we all are in stable situations, that grows and strengthens our community. And having a house that you can afford, that you're not struggling to stay in, is part of that. And housing definitely supports our local economy. We know that, again, if you're not stressed or stretched to afford your rent or your mortgage, then you are expending more income in the community. You're eating out more. You're going to the store and you're purchasing there. So all of these things are of a piece and they impact one another. As part of the process, we reached out and tried to make it known that this workforce housing task force was going on and inform the public about the findings. So part of what we did was we had public meetings. We also tried to advertise that by placing signs along on WADA. This is an example being shown here. We tried to reach out to businesses, and we also did placards and podcasts. So we tried all the media we could. We ended up with a toolkit talking about the options: housing preservation, housing production. You know, how is it that we're going to provide this workforce housing, this affordable housing in our community? And so we had to look at preservation, production, access to housing, funding as all part of this workforce housing policy. And we ended up with some recommendations, and I'll share them with you here. The first was housing preservation. Nothing's more affordable than the housing that you already have. One of the unique things about James City County is that it didn't really start growing as a county as we understand it today until the late 60s. As a matter of fact, if you go back and look at census data and you look at the county's history, prior to 1968, the county had a population of about 7,300, believe that or not. We're at about 76,000 today. What happened in the late 60s was that Anheuser-Busch located here, bringing forth a large industry with a large footprint with good paying jobs, and that attracted people here. Anheuser-Busch then developed Kings Mill, and then later on the park, Busch Gardens, and that then boosted our tourism, and those activities sort of built us into the community that we are today. So we don't have a large amount of filter down stock. We don't have those older houses that are affordable that become the starter homes that many communities have. We're just too new and too young. You can see in our housing growth patterns that in the 80s, 90s, and late aughts, or I guess mid aughts, is when you see our big building boom. And so a lot of those houses tend to have been built along the same period of time. They're all aging at the same period of time. But the first tenet of the workforce housing suggestions were a preservation of the housing stock that we do have, and then also looking out at redevelopment, focusing on our mobile home parks too, a component will, because we understand that that's the most affordable structures that we have in our community. Housing production. We want to look at adding to our existing housing stock and making sure that some of what we add to the stock is affordable. So we talked about different ways of finding that affordability. Maybe we should use some of public lands if we have any remnants. I think we all know that one of the largest remnants we have in our community is Eastern State, and there will be an extreme focus on how that's developed going forward. And so we think that the Workforce Housing Task Force at least offers us some thinking that how can some of that property, should it develop with residential, also have an affordable component, but expedited permitting, adaptive reuse. Having access to housing, again, thinking about, do we have the right structure with regard to mortgage? Do we have within the county policies set up to help individual or who are new into the marketplace, first-time home buyers? Do we have structures there to help them? A housing trust fund. This is an idea where the locality would have funding set aside to focus specifically on housing. It would be in a trust fund, so it would be immune to the budget cycles of feast or famine that we've experienced in the past 10 or 15 years. There was also some attention given to the opportunity zone, which currently exists in the lower end of the Roberts district in the Grove area. And so that's my presentation. And Brett and I are both here for any questions, any Q&A.
Yep. Vaughn, that was really good. Brett, yours too. And I don't know if any of you had seen the questionnaires that are available to complete on the county's website. They may have, I can't remember if we sent them out or if they may be on Facebook on our Williamsburg Association page, but they're detailed, and so the more information that you can give, that more helpful it is to Vaughn and Brett and Tammy Rosario and the entire team over at the county while they go through sort of the last phase of getting the input into the plan from us as residents. So, and Vaughn did reference, or rather Brett referenced the presentation that we gave to the county over the summer. It was me, Lisa Sturdivant, who I think all of us know, Virginia Realtors chief economist, but she and Vaughn have a very strong collaborative professional relationship through all of their work on housing in the Commonwealth. And then Sarah Stafford, who is the researcher of the housing study that we submitted to the county as an additional data set. So I think we've been very engaged as an organization, and there's still a great deal of work to do as the plan in its draft form begins to move through the Planning Commission and then ultimately through the Board of Supervisors.
Vaughn, it's Charlotte. I just really appreciate you continuing to make sure this is at the forefront within our community so we can all work together. We go back, many of us here go back many years at this point, and it's a conversation and that we've always had. And you know, it legitimately now feels like we're on a better path to actually address, you know, instead of just having the conversation of actually putting thoughts into action. And as I, over the years, see the reports and the updates and the efforts, you know, by so many, it just, you know, for those of us in real estate, you know, it's, you know, because you work with us, that it is an extremely important part of our business and our livelihoods. And one reason why we're in our business is to help people, you know, find homes or rentals or whatever, if they want to own, you know, to find that right property. So I am very excited to see how far it's come. And I know that has a lot to do with you personally. And then Brett, thank you so much as well. But it feels like it's right here. So that's exciting.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Welcome. It's true.
And
I've
had a hand in that, definitely.
Yes, for many years.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've always appreciated the support that we've gotten from the Williamsburg Regional Realtors Association, because you all have always been a vital component of getting the word out in your community. And you've always been someone who's stressed the importance of housing for our community writ large. And so I'm very thankful to have you all as colleagues and supporters in this.
Our pleasure. More to come. Are there questions? No. Nan, you're usually inquisitive when you see data and facts. I thought you might light on something if you have any questions. Not to put you on the spot, but I thought I'd point out that you're very data oriented.
Yes, I am very data oriented. I think from someone that was born and raised in the county, keeping our people here and getting them housing has been something that we've all been working on for many, many years. And I'm looking forward to the day that we actually have a game plan that is in action and we can see buildings going up or structure. I love the idea of Eastern State being turned into some sort of a property that can be used for workforce housing. So other than that, thanks for the call out there, Susan, but I'm good.
Nan's got a new puppy, in case you didn't know. Brett, you unmuted yourself, so I wondered if you wanted to throw in a comment. It looked like you might want to say something.
Oh, let's see, I just wanted to clarify the questionnaires themselves that we were referencing. The period for those ended about a week ago, so that we're already compiling the results of that. But you can still provide open comments, especially on the land use designation piece. So just wanted to provide some clarity for that, so people didn't show up on the website and then become disappointed that they couldn't find the questionnaire.
Good point.
And I would encourage you all, as you speak to your relations and friends in the county, let them know that this process is going on, especially with respect to the land use. I've seen that there's a lot of communication and conversation going on in some of the more informal groups around town, Nextdoor, the Nextdoor app, and then of course, Williamsburg News and Notes on Facebook. So any opportunity to sort of keep, to be an informed participant in those conversations is welcomed.
Yeah.
The other thing, Vaughn and Brett, that I think this should be considered is the help in the transportation end of it, right? That if we can keep more people here and not have those 17,000 or 18,000 traveling our roads, you know, in and out every single day, that it helps in that regard as well, right? That all these transportation dollars that we've been spending and widening 64 is great, but I think that if we can have our workforce people being a part of our community and staying put, that maybe we reduce that need constantly of having that expansion and all of our potholes and all of our, you know, things that we have in the school buses, you know, it makes it a safer road to travel as well. So the health and well-being of our citizens and transportation all comes into play.
That's a very strong point, Mrs. Homewood. Exactly right.
Anything else from anyone? No?
Quiet group. Everybody's ready for lunch.
Thank you all for inviting Brett and I to participate today. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for your patience with my technological issues. As Vaughn knows, that's one of my big Achilles heels.
Well, Brett didn't tell you he's a new dad. He's got like a 6-month-old at home. I don't even know if he's 6 months yet.
He's almost 7. He'll be 7 months next Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you have no sleep. You're sleep deprived.
No, in general, after the first 3 weeks, I think he almost has always slept at least 6 hours through the middle of the night. I know that's unusual, and we've been very grateful to him for that.
He's saving it up for later.
Yeah,
It will come. At some point, it will happen.
I believe it.
Right now, you just enjoy that perfect child.
Yes. Wait till he's taller than you are. Right? Well, you guys are the best, and I appreciate your being here. And we know we can always bring questions and, you know, requests for information to you and from you. So it's nice to have such a collaborative partnership.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys,
Bye, y'all.
bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Yeah.
That's really good news.
Yeah,
Or good update.
it's a very good update.
Ongoing, but it feels like it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, and if you have nothing to do and you want to actually read sort of where they are at this point as to the language within the plan, they do reference our housing study quite a bit. So, you know, I think we're looked at as a resource, which is exactly where we want to be. And it does seem like this conversation has been ongoing for decades. I mean, certainly since I've been working with the organization, but I do feel like they're actually doing more than paying lip service to it. And I think the establishment of the workforce housing work group really did make a difference, because it was such a broad organization of so many different people in the county, including us. We were represented. And it was a years long effort, but we came up with all those recommendations that I think some will move forward from the board and others may not, but they want to see what can be embedded into the comp plan. And then, you know, within maybe this time next year, we'll actually start seeing really some forward progress. So it just, local government just moves very, very slow, which is both a blessing and a curse. So
Susan, were there builders on that work group? I guess, you know, having a husband in the local government, you know, I constantly hear that no matter how much, you know, from the city of Norfolk, you know, they keep trying to move that density and moving, you know, those things to make all this happen, because everybody wants to try to find that affordable housing. But the pushback generally, and again, I don't want to say anything negative about the Home Builders Association, but the problem becomes sometimes the home builders aren't willing to build those smaller houses because there's no profit in them. And so all of the new construction or the building out is very difficult to get a mix of, you know, letting them do some of the workforce, you know, to have that balance there. Was there representation on that group from the builders?
So yes and no. You know, the what had been the Peninsula Housing and Builders Association was morphed into the Tidewater Builders Association, which is now the Coastal Virginia Builders Association. And it's based over on the other side of the water. Claudia Cotton, who'd been with PHBA, now is the CEO of the Coastal Virginia Builders Association. So they were going through some significant transition at the time of the work groups convening. And the board, and candidly at the time, Brian Hill, who is the county administrator, made it very clear that they wanted to take the effort beyond just James City County so that they could have some real professional expertise of how has this nut been cracked in other parts of Virginia. And candidly, even on the other side of the District of Columbia in Southern Maryland. So Brian brought in some experts. They were part of the work group, but they were, you know, fairly large scale builders from outside of the region, along with housing finance experts from Wells Fargo that was based in Baltimore. I mean, he really tried to make it, let's get out of our little cone and our bubble here, and how do we make this come together? Because at the time there really was there was nothing really going on with the Builders Association. There was, I believe, I'd have to go back and look, it's been like 18 months or so ago since we finished at the end of 2019 with the work group. There were about 30 or so many people on it. I represented you guys, and I can't recall if there was I don't believe there was anyone from James City County's building community. I would have remembered that. And remember too, it was just, the housing market was beginning to just sort of come back. I think it was it was probably just as well, maybe in some respects, that we did not have a PHBA builder sitting around the table that I recall, because I think we needed to have our heads, we needed to understand the framing that this was possible, and that there just didn't need maybe to be that barrier, as you said, Cindy. I mean, even publicly, how many times we've stood before the Board of Supervisors in years past where we would say, yes, 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 and the builders would stand up and say, oh, no, no, no. So yeah, I think the work group actually made a difference. And I can send you that.
Is it worth us reaching out to them and trying to establish that relationship, or to try to you know, maybe even without James City County, between us and them, to let them know that we have this high on our priority list and how can we work with them better to, you know, maybe we just need to understand each other a little bit better, maybe just sharing ideas and hearing from them and them hearing from us. I don't know. I'm open to making some kind of contact with them, but
I have, as I said, Claudia Cotton is their CEO. At the beginning of COVID, well, before it was COVID, we were supposed to get together back in March. And we ended up having a couple, just the two of us, just COVID happy hours, like Claudia and Susan, because we've, you know, had the pleasure of being colleagues for many, many years. And they were pretty focused on, at that point, going through the summer, like what is the building landscape going to look like post-COVID? So I think maybe, you know, perhaps having Claudia as, you know, a guest speaker at something would be helpful, but she knows that we're here. She knows about our housing studies. She knows about the collaboration we've had with VPAR, and you know, she knows about Lisa's Sturdivant. She's aware of what we're doing. But I think if we want to bring her into the fold closer, we certainly can. But I will say that she is a breath of fresh air versus some of the leadership that had been there when they were really struggling and PHBA just completely fell apart.
okay. Well, we'll just keep that in our back pocket for now, I guess. And, you know, if we do have an opportunity and we have any panels that we're putting together, right, that we think about making sure that they are involved, because I think they are a vital part of this puzzle. And I think that it would be like a piece missing in this grand picture if we leave them out of this and get them on board and committed to it. And I know they can't speak for every builder, right? That even if they come up with policy that they want to try to help us, that, you know, builders on their own are going to develop and build what they decide to build.
And what the market will bear.
Right.
And I think that's what they're trying to figure out in the post-COVID or the ongoing pandemic is what will the market bear? And it's changing, obviously. So
Right.
I'll write myself a note to get in touch with Claudia again. It's probably been since the end of last year, like November or so. And I'd actually reached out to her on some recurrent flooding issues that we wanted to bring to their attention. So it's been since before Christmas, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, that I last talked to her.
Before I forget, somebody asked me the other day, and I didn't have the answer right off the tip of my tongue, that development that's going up in the city right there behind Williamsburg Shopping Center, that mixed use development, is that all rental? Is it a mixture of rental and sales? Is it all rental?
All rental.
Okay.
It's furnished. It's Midtown Row. That's the name of it. And it is all rentals. It's, I believe if they're not all furnished, they're predominantly furnished. But I want to say that in a conversation I had with Michelle DeWitt, she'd mentioned that they were all furnished. And I saw Suzanne's hand go up.
We're going to be, sorry, kick my headset out. We're going to be, actually, our company is going to be involved in, I guess, getting them on the MLS master models. They are, I mean, first, the building's an abomination. I don't know how it passed through any jurisdictional thing. It's ugly as can be, but it did. And now we have this big ugly thing in the middle of our city. But they're not inexpensive. I think it's $1,500 or something for 1 bedroom and 23 or something for 2.
Yep.
But it's fully
I've got the rentals. I've got the list if anyone wants it, like on the 1, 2, 3, 4 bedroom. And I think the 4 bedroom is about $3,800 a month.
Yeah, and what they're doing is everything's included. You know, you've got furniture, but it covers all your utilities and everything like that.
So it doesn't anywhere meet the need of affordable housing or workforce housing is what I'm hearing.
Well, it depends.
It's designed as student housing. But they can't turn anybody away.
Not just student housing. They were also trying to fit the market niche of senior housing. People who are downsizing.
Who want to be around students.
Yeah, there's one other point of their leasing policies. They're renting them per bedroom. It's not so that's another thing that kind of limits who can rent them without excluding people right out. So they're renting them per bedroom. So that in itself lends itself to like a student or roommate situation.
Much of
And they
that
have to have
too-
11 and a half month lease.
So that was a topic of discussion last week in the inaugural meeting of the city's workforce housing work group. And the fact that those are pretty steep rental prices for a college town, but it was emphasized that there is a similarity in the demographics between college students and our seniors is what they're looking for. No maintenance, walkability, close to transportation centers. And they felt that the city felt that Midtown Row would meet both of those demographics housing needs. I'm a bit concerned, candidly, about the retail on the first floor and how that would possibly ever successfully be filled at this point, given that bricks and mortar retail a little bit pre-pandemic was in a big struggle. And I think now we're seeing with the pandemic, you don't necessarily need a bricks and mortar function in retail, but I think the city is very cognizant of that. That's one of the driving points of discussions that are now going on as of last week, will probably continue for the next 7-8 months of the city's workforce housing work group to try to get their arms around what we do with as a community to yield more affordable housing units. And they would like to see additional owner occupied homes. That is certainly one of the city's goals. And again,
but they just built all these rentals, right? So and so when are those units when are they going to be available? Do we know?
I believe they start leasing for occupancy come August.
Mm-hmm.
And what's
last I checked with them, they were leased up. Like they were like 75% leased up for move-in starting as early as May, I thought. But that was a few months ago, so maybe they've changed that timeline. But when I talked to them, they were like leased up. Like most of them were already rented, or at least they had, so maybe they were optimistic.
How many total units? Do we know how many total units there were?
I've got that data somewhere. I can try to find it. And I'm watching my time.
Lynn's looking for somebody.
Hey, Lynn.
Hello there. I
Hi.
apologize for being late. Got tied up in a we're going to kick somebody out of a rental. So that took a lot of time. But I know you're talking a lot about James City County. Susan, do you know what the status is on that renovation of the old George Washington Inn? I know that's over in York County.
That's York.
It is York. But when I was looking at it and reading an article about it going through, it's 1 and 2 bedrooms, and they're very affordable, what they're talking about. So does James City County and York County do very much cooperation from that standpoint? I know that with that being much more affordable for people who are in the service industries that we've been talking about, that seems like that would be a much more usable alternative than the mid-row with those prices.
So a couple of questions answered, I hope here. And again, I've got to pivot in just a few minutes to go to my 1 o'clock. So yes, to the question of do they collaborate? The city of Williamsburg, James City, and York County now conduct their comprehensive plan review and rewrite all at the same time. They used to be very staggered, and about I guess was maybe the last round of comp plan reviews, they determined that it was not very functional and it was not very efficient as a true region for the purpose of cohesiveness for each of those localities to operate in non-concurrent years of doing their comp plan, because we're too tied together as a region for there not to be that ongoing similar timeline. So now they're all doing it together.
Good.
They're all in the same posture of getting close to the final drafts of each of their comp plans that will go then to each of their planning commissions. And they do very much collaborate. Each of those localities has a housing study from us that was conducted by Sarah Stafford. In the case of York County, it was jointly researched by Sarah Stafford and Tom Hall. So each community has its window and its snapshot and its trending data from the association, and they're all talking the same language. They're all speaking to the same subject. So yes, they do collaborate very, very much.
And did that George Washington Inn renovation, did it get its final vote, or do you know?
That I don't know, but I know that the model behind it was the quarter path flats here in the city of Williamsburg. That was started by Doug Pons, who'd been the owner of the hotel that then converted into workforce housing and affordable housing units. That, I mean, it is doing so well that he's trying to figure out a way to convert more of those empty hotel rooms into additional flats. And that was really the model for York County. I don't know what that final vote situation is. I can call Abbott Woodall and kind of find out. But I think,
Go on the York County site and find out.
Yeah, that's Abbott Woodall is the Vaughn Paller in York County. So.
Well, it's part of that whole revitalization that Vaughn talked about, right? That's what they're hoping to do, is that if we can't get the builders to really focus on the new construction to do this revitalization of some of these properties around, that's kind of gone, because we had a lot of hotel rooms, right? So it sounds like they're really focusing on trying to revitalize some of these properties, which is a good
You
thing.
hate to drive down a road and see something that's closed up and just sitting there.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got the homeless that we have all over the area, and their problems that we're having. There's lots of opportunities for help to people who need it. I think it's just a matter of somebody keeping an open mind.
Yeah, but workforce housing and also retirement facilities is what a lot of those hotels have been revitalized into recently. Yeah, across the state.
Speaking as a senior, I would not want to live in what is essentially a dormitory environment, especially since they're putting in a brewery across the street and there's a liquor store not too far away. The kids are going to have a lot of fun because it's off campus.
Oh, I don't know. I live in Nelson's Grant, and one of the nicest things is that I can crawl to a liquor store if I really need to.
My concern is the students can get there too quickly.
Oh,
I don't mind me getting there, but I think putting a brewery, marketing that you're going to be adding a brewery when you're targeting primarily that population,
right.
Excites the kids, not necessarily the parents.
Well, Susan, I know you have to jump. Charlotte, do you have any final wrap-up words, if any?
Thanks for joining in today.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Right,
Bye.
let's keep the word out about these. That we need big groups. We can do better than these.
I think there were 8 or 10 of us all together on this call. So everybody spread the word. Susan, we appreciate you trying and pulling these people together. It's all great information that realtors working in our area need to know about. They need to be familiar with these topics. So we are.
I'm glad you recorded it.
We are recording it and we are sending them out in our newsletter. So hopefully more are watching them on the YouTube channel.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
See ya.